Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers. Wait a minute. Before we go on, I need to apologize for what's going on behind me because I just got back from New York. So that laundry's going on. That's why the bedding is all gone. I'm also clearing out my closet. That's why there's I had poster tubes in my closet with no posters in them. I don't know what I thought I was going to do with those. There's clothing everywhere. I apologize. Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that, you couldn't raise me to be, a person who cares about, keeping a clean house. I'm trying my best. I hope to one day give you a grandchild who will be just like you and just be super tidy, and they'll drive me nuts, but you'll be really proud of them, and I will have at least lived up somehow in part. I'm sorry. Okay, so moving on to the actual movie, Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers. That's kind of what you need to know about it, that it is a Coen brothers movie. There are moments where I was kind of like, where is this movie going? And then I remembered, nobody ever knows in a Coen brothers movie when they're watching it where it's actually going. That's kind of besides the point. The focus of these movies are always in the characters and in the ride, in the journey along the way. So once I kind of like, wait a minute, it became a much more enjoyable ride. That being said, I did ultimately leave the theater a little disappointed. The problem, I feel like the biggest problem with this movie is not the plot itself, but the focus. And that's because all of this is being seen through the eyes of Josh Brolin's character. Josh Brolin plays the president of a movie studio, or whatever his title is. He's the head of the movie studio. He's the guy that whenever problems arise, he's got to be the one to fix them. So when his biggest movie star, played by George Clooney, goes missing, is kidnapped, and then being ransomed, that's the biggest problem of the day. Then he's also got to deal with a bunch of other little problems. And then he's also got to deal with the fact that he's been offered a really great job with Lockheed, these guys, guys that make really awesome spaceships for me to enjoy. And then also sort of, having to deal with all that. It's very much a day in the life of kind of movie. But here's the problem. Josh Brolin, very likable guy, very likable actor. The character himself, sort of straight-laced, sort of just like, the guy just trying his best to kind of keep the train on the tracks. Unfortunately, what little we do get to see of the other characters played by the marquee actors, because this was never marketed as a Josh Brolin movie. This was a movie with George Clooney and Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson and Jonah Hill. They're on screen very little compared to Josh Brolin. So when we do get to see them and see what happens with their characters and what little we get to see of them interacting with the other actors, it's like I would have loved to have seen a movie about that. If we could have gotten a movie where George Clooney is interacting with Jonah Hill and Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum, give me that. I would have loved a movie like that, but unfortunately it's not what we get here. I get what they're going for. It's not necessarily wrong. I just felt like it would have been a lot more interesting just because, for example, there's this I don't know the actor's name, but the character is a guy named Hobie Doyle. And Hobie Doyle is like a John Wayne dude, wannabe, where he's just like, that's his bread and butter. He makes westerns, he looks good on a horse, he can twirl a rope and shoot a gun and sing a damn good country song, and that's what he does it better than anybody else. And then along the way, the studio has the great idea to go ahead and rebrand him as Hobart Doyle, the newest dramatic actor. The poor kid can't, that's not where he should be. I mean, some people do one thing very well, doesn't mean they're going to do all things very well. And it's painful just because it's like the poor kid is trying. He's such a genuine all shucks kind of character where it's like, oh, I want you to succeed and you're just not. That's adorable. But I feel like if you had gone ahead and made him the focus and decided that this story was going to go through, his perspective, that could have been a hilarious movie. Just a guy who just really is out of his depth. He explains to this other character. By the way, there was a little subplot in which he's supposed to be dating a sort of Carmen Miranda sort of actress. And I'm watching this and they really get so little screen time, but I'm watching it and I'm like, that would have been a really, really cute little movie to see. And again, we don't get to see it and it's upsetting. But to see him, I think if this movie had been about a guy just been like really out of his depth, not really understanding the full extent of what's happening, not really understanding, not because he's dumb, but just because he's so sweet and unassuming and assumes everybody else is too, I think that could have been really something. But we're seeing it, but I think that's more just the fact of Not because Josh Brolin's character isn't likable enough or not interesting. It's just the fact that we get to see so little of everybody else. But I get it. Josh Brolin is the eye of the storm. All right. Channing Tatum. We need to have that conversation. He has the best sequence in this entire movie. He's got about a 3 or 4 minute song and dance number. He's sort of a Fred Astaire kind of character that he's playing. Just those old school guys that can sing and dance and look damn good while they do it. To find out that he couldn't sing and couldn't tap dance before being cast in this movie is upsetting because he's so good. It's like, how did you... That's besides the point. I appreciate you nonetheless. Yeah, it's so good. I would have watched the whole entire musical after that. And seeing this, I'm going to be really mad if 2-3 years pass by and this guy still doesn't have a musical under his belt, because it's going to be a waste. What else did I really like? Okay, so I think at the end of this movie, I was trying to figure out what was the point of this. And because there's always sort of a point to the Coen Brothers movies, there's always at least a little message or a little morality going on there, with Lebowski, it was, the dude abides. That was the last line tagged on. And it was like, yeah, the dude abides. The dude's always going to be the dude. He's unflappable. Hell yeah, go for it. And then in Fargo, it's Frances McDormand, saying, there's more to life than a little money. Don't you know that? It's like, oh, yeah, that's true. Good for you. Because, she's the heart of the movie. She's, the moral center of it. And it's like, yeah, it's really fucked up, all the things that you just did for money. Like, we need to remember that. And I feel like in this movie, there's this line that Josh Brolin gives to George Clooney's character. Because this whole time, Josh Brolin's character, of course, being wooed by Lockheed, they're really trying to sell themselves on this whole idea of like, well, at Lockheed, you could be doing really serious work, and what you do could matter, because movies are just make-believe. They're just silliness. They're they're frivolous, and they don't mean anything, and who cares? Everyone's going to have a TV in their house one day anyways, and nobody's going to go to the pictures. What you do doesn't matter, But here at Lockheed, it could matter. That's their selling point. By the way, the whole time that dude is going on that whole spiel, every time he says something to that effect, the audience was just visibly like, oh, you asshole. Because it's just so obvious that we love movies. That's why we're there on a Saturday night watching, a great movie. It's like, oh, you're an asshole. But, yeah, at the end, Josh Brolin goes to, after hearing all this for, the better part of the movie, he goes to George Clooney and says, what you do matters. What you do here has worth, And I feel like that was the ultimate sort of point of this movie. This really was the Coen Brothers giving old Hollywood this love letter, this homage, acknowledging the fact that that old Hollywood machine did some really fucked up shit. I mean, they really did with, knowing now in 2016, knowing that they actually would have unmarried actresses adopt their own children in order to avoid PR scandals, knowing that they didn't ask or didn't tell about homosexual actors or directors, knowing that they would go ahead and just completely change the trajectory of people's careers on a whim just because they thought like, yeah, that kid, he'll look good in the costume, put him in there. Knowing all this, and I feel like the Coen Brothers would go ahead, I mean, this is the love letter in which they say, not in a blind, sort of rosy, glossy kind of way, like, oh, old Hollywood was so great and fantastic, but like, no, knowing all the fucked up shit about you, we still love you, and the stuff that you did really did have worth, and it was, and it has value. We appreciate the art that you gave us. The whole time you guys were doing, completely messed up things in the background sometimes, but it's still appreciated, because it is. You look back at those old Hollywood movies, and you're just like, yeah, that shit was awesome. It's not the movies we're making today. It's definitely, they play with the tropes a little bit about the way that stuff is shot back then and the stuff that we do today especially. But we still appreciate it. We still look back and say, yeah, thank you. But yeah, ultimately this movie, enjoyable, very pretty. If you've got, 2 hours to waste, absolutely. Is it something you absolutely have to see? The Coen Brothers have definitely made better movies. They definitely made worse. So I feel like if you really want to get introduced to the Coens, Lebowski, Fargo, I can name you a whole bunch of others before I would recommend this one probably. So let me know what you think. Comment below, subscribe, do whatever it is that you want to do. I got to get out of here. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I got to go buy my chips and soda. So I will talk to you guys later, okay? Love you, bye.